Hey everyone, it's Bill Hilton here again, talking about chords, music theory, piano improvisation, songwriting and much more. Today we're going to be taking a look at the augmented chord, which if you're learning about chords and harmony, or if you're interested in developing your songwriting or piano improvisation, you are going to find super useful. Now what we're going to do first of all is look at what the augmented chord is and how it works, but then we'll think about how you can put it to use in your own music. We'll think about how you can use it to spice up your chord progressions, how it can move you from one chord to another, how it can even help you change key, and then my personal favourite, how you can use it as a passing chord. Let's find out more. Let's start off by having a think about the basic geography of augmented chords. Here's F augmented. We'd notate that by writing F plus or F aug, F-A-U-G. As you can see, it's really similar to a regular F major chord. There's a triad of F major in its root position, by which I mean F, the note that the chord is named after, is the lowest note of the chord, okay? So F major triad in its root position. And F augmented is just a single note difference. All I've done is taken the fifth note, the top note of the F major triad, and raised it by a single semitone, a single half step, okay? But just making that tiny change has made a big difference to the chord. So we go from the kind of a settled, harmonious sound of F major up to a much crunchier, much more unstable sound when we go to F augmented. Now, the way that augmented chords are built is really interesting and has big implications for the way they work. If you think about any chord, they're made up of stacks of intervals, okay? So a regular major chord is two intervals stacked one on top of another, okay? An interval is just the distance between any two notes on a piano keyboard. So if we look at F major in its root position, we have an interval of a major third. That's a distance of 5 semitones, 5 half steps. And on top of it, we've got a minor third, the distance of 4 half steps, 4 semitones. So major third with a minor third stacked on the top of it, okay? Now we can play that in different voicings and inversions. Yeah, but we generate the basic chord by taking the root note of the chord, the note the chord is named after, and putting a major third and a minor third on top of it, and that's given us the basic notes of F major. Now, F augmented, any augmented chord, rather than being a major third with a minor third on top of it, is a major third with another major third. So we've got our interval made up of 5 semitones, and another interval made up of 5 semitones. F augmented, and that tiny change makes a big difference because now we've got a chord that's kind of symmetrical, okay? It's made up of 2 equal intervals, and there are various other chords that are like that as well, and they all tend to be a bit kind of weird and unstable. So the diminished 7th chord, for example, there's F diminished 7th, and that's made up of a load of stacked minor thirds, so minor third, minor third, minor third, and then you get quartal and quintal chords. There's G quartal, which is 2 perfect fourths stacked on top of each other, and G quintal, 2 perfect fifths stacked on top of one another. Now the thing about symmetrical chords like that is that once you start inverting them, once you start moving them around, weird stuff starts to happen. Let me show you what I mean. If we take our F augmented chord, and we try to move it up one inversion, in other words, if we try to play the notes in a different order, we do this, but we've created a whole new augmented chord. We've gone from F augmented to what you could easily call A augmented. So there's a regular chord of A major, we raise the 5th a semitone, and we've got A augmented, okay? But it's exactly the same notes as F augmented. If you did that with a regular major chord, you would just get root position, first inversion, second inversion. It would still remain an F chord. But by moving up the augmented chord, moving the augmented chord up an inversion, we've actually got a whole new augmented chord. So we would go from F augmented, move it up an inversion, and we get A augmented, move it up another inversion, and we get C sharp or D flat augmented. Okay, there's a regular C sharp major or D flat major chord. and there's D flat augmented, but it's the same note as F augmented. And that actually means there's a limited number of augmented chords, okay? Because once you've built an augmented chord off C, D flat, D, and E flat, okay, and rotated them through the various inversions, you've actually also covered off the augmented chords of the rest of the, the rest of the scale as well, black notes and white notes, okay? So there are actually only 4 different augmented chords. One more point I just want to cover off right now is that only major chords can be augmented. Okay, you can't augment minor chords. Let's look at why. There's a chord of F minor. Let's try augmenting it. Let's take the 5th note of the chord and move it up a semitone. Can you see what's happened? We've just wound up with a major chord. It's D flat major in its first inversion. You can take any minor triad, try augmenting it, and you just end up with a major chord. So only major chords can actually be augmented. Now, if you're putting augmented chords to work in your own music, you have to remember that they are unstable, and it's their instability that makes them useful. They always want to go somewhere else. Let's look at a couple of things you can do with them. Let's stick in F major for now. And imagine that we are making our tonic chord, our number 1 chord, temporarily augmented. Okay, so maybe it's the 2nd chord in the song, whatever, after we've started with a regular F as our tonic. Where does that chord want to take us? Okay, well, a really natural and obvious place to go would be up to a B flat chord, the number 4 chord in the key of F major. And you could see how, that's a very natural thing to do because there's quite a strong pull to B flat from the F augmented chord. We've got the F, which is the shared note between them. We've got A, which wants to take us up to B flat, and we've got the C sharp, which is kind of desperate. It's kind of dying to get up to D there. Okay, so a really natural thing to do. Yeah. Equally, it could take us to a D minor chord. Again, for pretty much the same reason, only this time there are 2 shared notes, but we've got that magic C sharp that really wants to drag us up to the D. So if we're in the key of F major and we use an F augmented chord, it doesn't want to rest for long, it wants to take us somewhere else. Now, in any major key, and let's stick with major keys for now, we've got 3 chords that we can make augmented, okay? They are the major chords of the key, the major diatonic chords of the key. Of course, you can go out and use non-diatonic chords, you can get weird and wacky with chords that don't belong in the key, but let's for now think about diatonic chords. Let's temporarily go into C major to make it nice and clear. There is the tonality of C major established. We've got 3 major chords in the key of C major: C, F, and G. Now we can make any one of those augmented. So let's see what happens when we do that with the different major chords in that key. Well, with C major, we've seen what an augmented tonic chord does. It's likely to take us up maybe a 4th, up to F, because of the proximity of the notes, or up to A minor, up a 6th. Okay, that's exactly the same as the process we've just looked at in F, just using the chords of the different key. Okay, so our augmented tonic chord will take us to a variety of those places, but those are probably the most likely, the most common, up to an F chord or an A minor chord. What about if we take the number 5 chord in the key of C major? That's G. Okay, so let's augment it. The thing it really wants to do is take us up a 4th, which is back to the tonic chord. Okay, now the chord of G in C major is the number 5 chord anyway, the dominant chord. It really wants to resolve back to the tonic, especially if we play it as a dominant 7th chord. Making it augmented is another way of giving a little bit more kind of dominant character. Okay, because we've got that E flat that wants to take us up to the E there. It's a really natural resolve up to the C. Okay, so augmented dominant chords often get used as kind of substitute dominants, but we'll have a look at how that works in a bit more detail in a second. What about the number 4 chord? We're still in C major. What about if we take the F chord and we augment that? Now this is kind of risky territory because again, one of the most likely places it wants to take us is up to a B flat chord, as we saw the F chord do a second. But B flat isn't diatonic to C major, so if we go up to B flat, it sounds like we've changed key. Now you might want to do that using augmented chords to change key. It's a way of doing it. It can sound a bit kind of rough and brutal in it and inelegant, but it does work. Let's listen to it again. Let's get back into C major. Here we are in C, F augmented, B flat, and it sounds like a real key change, okay? So when you're using the number 4 chord, just be careful about augmenting it. You could use it to go to other places. You could use it to go to D minor and strictly speaking stay within the tonality of C major, but it would still start to sound like a key change, okay? So just be careful with it there. Now in terms of typical uses of the augmented chord, like I said, a really common one is to use it instead of a dominant chord. You hear that quite a lot in quite old-timey kind of jazz music. So let's go into the key of B flat major. And let's just play a few bars of something a little bit jazzy or cocktaily, winding up on a dominant chord. Okay, there's our F, we're playing an augmented chord and it wants to take us back to the B flat chord. So it makes quite a nice dominant, but like I said, it's quite an old-fashioned kind of sound, okay? I quite like it, but if you were playing kind of jazz from the 20s or 30s, you will come across that, you might want to use it. You know, it's quite a distinctive sound of that era. If you're enjoying this tutorial so far, I think you're really going to like my books and my piano packs. I'm not going to take up your time by talking about them in detail right now, but once the tutorial is finished, please do check out the links in the description text down below, or in the YouTube card's top right hand corner, or on the end screen. Thousands of people have bought my books and piano packs and really benefited from them, and I think you will as well. You also get augmented chords being used as substitute dominant chords in quite a lot of kind of blues and early rock and roll. Let's go into C and play a little bit of C blues. Okay, what I did there is play the augmented shape in the right hand with a little bit of the regular G shape in the left for a little bit of a clash. And as you can hear, it wants to resolve back. The reason it works there is because the G augmented, thinking in terms of C major here, includes the E flat, which is part of the C blues scale, okay? So it gives us that really natural kind of hard bluesy sound. Another really common use of the augmented chord happens in minor keys where you have songs that use what we call one of the line cliches. A line cliche is where you have a chord progression based on typically a descending bass line, okay? So the bass line is the root of it and the chords, you know, kind of follow organically from the bass line. It's a really common way of writing songs. Really common line cliche, let's go into A minor. Really common line cliche would be something like this. Okay, so we've gone from A minor to G sharp augmented, which is also kind of similar to E7. It's got some notes in common, especially that G sharp. Okay, man, that's a dominant chord in A minor, but we'll call it G sharp augmented there. Well, it is G sharp augmented, and then dropping down to C with its fifth note, the G in the bass. Okay, and then dropping down to that chord, which you would call F sharp half diminished seventh, or F sharp minor 7 flat 5, whatever you want to call it. What's happening there is that we've actually got an augmented chord resolving somewhere slightly different, okay? Rather than resolving up a fourth or a 6, as they commonly do, instead we've got it resolving up to a C chord, but it's a C chord with a G in the bass, okay? And it's the strength of that bass note which is making that resolution work. Okay, using different bass inversions leads us to another, in fact, probably my favourite use of the augmented chord, which is as a kind of special passing chord. If you're familiar with the music of Richard Rodgers, he does this loads and loads. Imagine we're in the key of C, and we're getting towards the end of our song and we want to get to something like a 2-5-1 progression to bring us back to the tonic, okay? So let's, I think that Rodgers does a lot is to take the tonic chord, C, but to put its fifth in the bass, then to move everything in the bass up a semitone to give us an augmented chord, and then to go to that chord, F major 7, you either put an F in the bass or you could put a D in the bass to make it a D minor 9, and then to some sort of substitute dominant chord. Okay, so you get that in songs like Lady is a Tramp, or moving into F major, get it in You'll Never Walk Alone. Okay, really favourite trick with Rodgers, and you use it in, you find it in lots of other songwriters of that era as well. It's quite a handy one if you're writing your own songs to use actually, because it's a really cool, really powerful sound. That tonic chord with a fifth in the bass, okay, is really kind of epic and kind of full of energy, full of beans, ready to go somewhere. And then take it up to the augmented chord, you get that incredible instability, and then you can go into the 4-5-1 or 2-5-1 resolution to get you to the end. Okay. Okay, slightly different dominant substitution I'm using there, and back to the tonic. So that's it for another tutorial. Don't forget what I said about checking out my books and piano packs. I think you'll really like them. Links in the description text down below, YouTube cards top right hand corner, and right here on the end screen. I'll see you next time.